shift to the PLOS model of journals, Public Library of Science, you're going to see more of the sort of a layered peer review, where the peer review will be partially public and instantaneous, and then partially more rigorous in traditional. And I think with education, it'll be the same way. You're going to see a move toward online learning inevitably. Now, that doesn't mean that campuses will lose meaning, because there's certain things you have collaborative work, invention, having a relationship between a university and businesses and the community around it. Like Rensselaer is a great example of a school. They have labs, invention labs, entrepreneurship labs, where they're working with the community to solve problems for businesses. That stuff is a function of a physical school in a physical place with physical relationships. So and that's why those of you in academia can feel confident there's still a role for the physical university. But it'll be more of a hub and spoke system and a hybrid form of learning where, like my son, just one last example, my son learned the After Effects software. He's taken classes at Pace and stuff like that, but he learned that by buying the software and then going on YouTube. And he's now pretty good at it. And so skilled stuff like learning calculus, learning After Effects, that doesn't have to happen in the classroom. So I think it'll be a hybrid kind of outcome. I can't remember. Yeah.
I wonder if you could say a little bit more about why it is that you think that traditional legal tools aren't working to help manage the population-related environmental problems. Is it that you think they're not working, or just that we ought to be supplementing with these sort of soft law tools that...
Oh, okay. Well, we have this bad habit of the climate bill. Actually, there's a paper, if you go on, the Council on Foreign Relations is a really good blogger named Michael Levy. He's energy environment. He did a piece today on a new paper that I haven't had time to read yet myself, but it says if Waxman and Markey had passed, it kind of assesses, given the trajectories we see now in energy use, largely because of natural gas and other innovations, that the way the cap and trade bill was structured, we would end up in 2020 with higher emissions than we're going to end up with now without the bill. And it's because of all those aspects of negotiating a bill that lead to a very weak instrument. The same thing was happening with the climate treaty. There's so many out clauses that it is soft law in the end anyway. And I see the climate, the treaty process still has value, getting all the world's countries together to talk, to articulate their definition of the climate problem, which is different from Ethiopia than it is for the Inuit, is immensely valuable. And it's a place to articulate what you're doing. It's a place to sort of demarcate, this is where we're going. And that alone can build us some progress. But the idea that we're going to have a firm cap on carbon at the national level or at the global level that's meaningful is, to me, I think that's ancient history. I'll give you one last example. Australia got a lot of great press for enacting a climate bill, a carbon cap. But they're also exporting millions of tons of coal to China that isn't accounted for in their domestic cap. And to me, that's complete hypocrisy. You can't, and they're saying, the response is, well, no, it's China's responsibility. You account for the emissions where the emissions are, not where the coal came from. And I think for a rich country to claim credit for having a carbon cap while it's sending its carbon to China to burn is ridiculous. So that's my thinking.
Last question.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. It was an honor to listen to you speak and coming here. So, one thing I noticed with your graph of the population and speed jump, if you were to put that on arbitrary scales in the past, whatever, you'd see a lot of speed jumps. You'd also see a lot of crashes, both for human population and biodiversity. And one thing I've also noticed is, like the International Panel on Climate Change, when they put out future projections, they never really consider that. If there was a population crash, there would be some uptake of carbon. I was just curious, do you know why people don't really look at that? Or do you know anybody who is considering those types of scenarios?
Yeah, there's a guy named Brian O'Neill at University of Colorado. He was at IASA, the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis in Austria. IASA does a lot of work of that sort. Much more detail on population trends and how they relate to things like carbon. So I could follow up with you later if you want. But Brian O'Neill has done some really good work on that point, exactly what you're talking about, taking more account for population change and fertility rates. And that's,
Thank you. I think through his blog, we can continue this conversation that we just begun here today. I'm going to turn it over to Bill Schultz.
Thank you very much, Andrew and Andy. I think you've given us all a lot of food for thought. We're going to have a reception out here. It's actually going on now, and we're back. You can talk to Andy briefly out there before we leave. And in appreciation of your presentation today, we have a small token of appreciation from the Prairie Research Institute.
thank you very much.
So with that, I think we can go out to the foyer and,
Great.
And mix.
Take off my...